Hey Alpha fam, welcome back to another episode of Alpha Commission. Today on Alpha Commission, of course, we're going to go over that sideways action on the Bitcoin chart. Now on Bitcoin's chart here, you can see that we are just continuing to kind of oscillate between these highs and these lows between approximately 110 and 122,000. Now we did identify a bullish shark harmonic as well as a bullish falling wedge inside of the group in our scalping section. Now, these are very small patterns compared to this extremely large rising wedge, which is a bearish pattern, and this much larger crab harmonic that is actually coming right hot on the heels of this gigantic bearish shark harmonic. So, you know, if we're just going to put pattern against pattern, the bear patterns are kind of dominating. However, if we zoom out, we can see that we did break out and we're still in that technical support area where we still have a chance to turn this big area here that we did break out from into support and perhaps continue on our merry way. And that would constitute a bullish breakout on a parabolic pattern. And I would just give that one the edge any day of the week. So in terms of patterns, really, it's a little bit of a stalemate right now. A lot of people are looking at what Jerome Powell might have to say today in Jackson Hole. Of course, he could show the hand of the Fed in terms of what decision they might be making in the next FOMC interest rate decision meeting. And of course, that will be in September. So, if August, as is pretty traditional, ends up continuing to be bearish, then we could expect some, bearish news coming out of Jackson Hole, and maybe we lose our footing and come back down to support, which I would put, first we would kind of test out this 110 area, just see if we can kind of wick down there and flip back above it. If we can't do that, then perhaps a drop to 100K, and should we just push through 100K, I think the fear of God in the market would come at that 93 to 95K area. And then you better pray to God that you recapture that golden parabola of ours so that we can, again, just continue on our merry way. Now, if we do have the fear of God put in the market, that would shake out a lot of weak hands. It would basically reset the market, and that could provide rocket fuel to the upside. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. Every time that we have come in contact with my golden parabola, we have just rocketed to outer space, and it has been probably the best opportunities that you've had in this market. Of course, I've been tracking this for the Alpha Fam in the AR collective group. Link is in the description of the video below. Every week we do go over the macro there. Now, let's talk about a couple upward targets, just in case those bullish patterns on the short time frames do play out. If I do zoom in here, you can see that bullish shark harmonic and that bullish falling wedge is now forming bullish divergence at a bullish order block on these lower time frames. So this is all setting up for a mean reversion to the upside. And I have a measured move approximately to 117,000. They might front run that if the news is just a little bit bearish tomorrow or maybe a little bit uncertain. They could overthrow it and definitely come back into that rising wedge pattern, that purple rising wedge pattern here, if we are able to flip 118, and it would look pretty bullish if we were able to flip 120, because what that would do is we would basically have broken down from that bearish falling wedge. Basically, everyone could think that we might back test it bearishly and break down, but if we were able to flip back into the pattern and just find our support above those harmonic targets, basically above this range high over here, that could look quite interesting to continue to push up into this wedge and maybe even do an overthrow, perhaps to our 126 pattern. And who knows, with the right conditions, into September, right? Maybe into October, we could see those targets of the 130s, maybe even 140s, where I would suggest that the market would probably get a little bit exhausted and try to have pullbacks again. And if we did lose the wedge this time, then maybe that's where things break down. Charts don't always go in a straight line. In fact, they rarely do. They often have extremely erratic behavior at the end of parabolic moves and also into parabolic moves. So this would be pretty par for the course. So, if anything that I've said upset you, just understand that we are talking about parabolic price action. And if you want to take advantage of that to the upside, you have to tolerate a little bit of it to the downside. Now let's go ahead and take a look at Ethereum. Ethereum, of course, we did have a long setup just in the scalping section of the group where I did suggest an entry here at 41.30 approximately. We did end up coming all the way to our measured move of that bullish harmonic target. We did have a bullish crab harmonic. We also had a very long streak of bullish divergence. And we did do a little bit of a back test on the bullish order block that we had put there on shorter time frames. And that suggested this was a good opportunity to long. Unfortunately, we weren't able to recapture this diagonal here. And had we been able to flip back above that diagonal, that would have been just as bullish as what I was talking about on that scenario with Bitcoin. However, at the current reading, we are getting a little bit of a rejection there. This is looking like a higher low. And so as long as we maintain that higher low posture, I don't even care if we dip down, maybe back to that 4100 area. As long as we maintain a higher low here, we still have that opportunity to chug along and maybe even try to recapture that bullish trend line there. Now, we might back test it negatively, or we might get rejected up here towards our highs, even if we do continue to push up, if we're not able to flip back above that diagonal eventually. So, again, August tends to be a very bearish month. We typically have pullbacks of 15, 20%, sometimes 25 to 50%, but those were really in the early days of Bitcoin. And so I just assume that Ethereum and other altcoins are probably not going to be immune to any type of serious pullback that Bitcoin might have. However, currently, if we do zoom out on Ethereum, you can see that we are just bullishly back testing our macro breakout here at the top of our range. And considering where we are on Ethereum, just retesting these candles back here, just retesting the tops of these candles down here, we're very bullishly postured. Okay, we didn't even have a bullish pullback. We are literally just in the bullish impulsive posture right now. If we do have a more of a pullback, that would probably just be a bullish pullback, unless we actually lost, 3,700, maybe 3,500. Okay, then I would wonder maybe what's going on here. In Solana, kind of the same story, right? If you zoom out on Solana, this is extremely bullish. This is starting to look a little toppy, but it's also looking like a higher low. And, maybe we're just caught in the middle of the move here. Now you can't see my 8% measurement here. That's because we were taking a couple long positions just in the scalping section there in the group, where we did get a nice, I think this was about 6%, something like a 2% move. And then this 8% move, which is also looking like a higher low and a breakout of this bullish falling wedge here on Solana. I do have a target of that 195. We didn't quite get up there, but I think 8% on a scalp on a very low time frame is a pretty good move. Hopefully a few members took their profit on that. Of course, I do recommend that whenever you start pushing on these little short time frame scalps, just move your stop loss to break even. So if it comes back on you, no harm, no foul. If it moons and you wake up the next morning with $1 million, awesome, right? This trade currently would still be going. It never got stopped out. And so this is just an awesome trade by the Alpha Fam there. But guys, I think I'm going to end this show here. Let's go ahead and just see what happens with Jackson Hole tomorrow before we make any rash decisions about our positions in the market. You don't have to be overly leveraged to the upside or overly leveraged to the downside. Just see what the Federal Reserve Chairman has to say what his bias seems like, and then see what the temperature of the market is. If the stock market wants to cool down into possibly a rotation that then continues bullishly later, maybe at the end of September or in October, that's totally okay. Maybe crypto just goes sideways. Okay, maybe it has a pullback of its own. It doesn't really matter. Not getting rate cuts isn't the end of the world. This market is still pretty solid. It's a very bullish market, and I don't think that we're going to get that major collapse until maybe the end of the year or maybe even the middle of 2026. So I'm just going to keep my eyes open for opportunities, and I'll hope you join me. Please like and subscribe this video, or check out the group in the link of the description below. That's your alpha for the day. Stay safe and happy trading.